from Intercambio. And since the pandemic started, my son has had an extremely difficult time with online learning. Working on a computer just it's not productive for him. He's very easily distracted, and he was recently diagnosed with ADHD. And his therapist said that one of the things he needs to do is be taken to the library regularly and have a steady supply of books so that he is able to do some offline focused reading. We requested a hold of some books. The librarians were very helpful and picked out some books for him and set them aside for us to go pick up. But since the teen section is still closed and the adult section is closed, he can't go and pick out and walk around and get books on his own. I'd like to see that change. So I think the library is definitely a central part of community life, and we need to bring back the 13 full-time jobs that were eliminated and the 50 part-time positions that had been eliminated over the past year, as well as increase the funding back to the 2019 funding levels. I heard that it's about $1.3 million that is needed to bring it back to the 2019 levels. And yet we spent almost the exact same amount on funding more police officers and new police vehicles to deal with the homeless population. So I am asking, as a library user and city resident, that this councils take steps to begin the formation of a library district that can provide sustainable long-term funding for our library system. It could free up millions of dollars in the city's budget by removing the need for the city to fund the library. And then
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Anna. Your time is up. Next, we have Lynn Siegel, Nami Bazan, and Miho Shida. Lynn?
I love the library. It's not a matter of how much I love the library. I probably will get to go to the library in my next life because I spend my whole life at the planning board, at the Water Resources Advisory Board, at the Open Space Board of Trustees, fighting CU South, fighting for people's housing value in Boulder to be equitable and for social and racial equity in this community. This is a regressive tax, whether it's sales tax or it's property tax. It's regressive because property tax goes up when the land value goes up. And all of these projects in Boulder and all of these needs in Boulder, and why should we have a library district extending to other counties? We send the homeless outside of our county. And then we expect them to come back and we're going to make a trade now and they can use our libraries. No, our services need to be met. We need to not have these things as afterthoughts. We need to have libraries in Gun Barrel in every community. Why should people from Gun Barrel commute to Boulder? We can transfer the books from branch to branch as people need them. It's a matter of how, not that we don't all love the library. Of course we love the library. I wish I knew Caroline Alden, who next door testified for this project tonight, because I would have talked to her, but I don't have time to talk to her because I'm at planning board and everything else, trying desperately to keep things affordable in this town before it becomes a town of Elon Musk next door to Elon Musk. Let the developers pay. Let the developers pay. Someone spoke of saving our soul. Our libraries are our soul. Well, so was Red Letter Books that got taken over by a condo that wanted an electric car elevator to save the space for their overpriced condos because a ramp takes up extra space. This is obscene what's going on in this town. I have watched condo after condo after development get every subsidy, and the city council can't do enough to help them along. Marpa House tonight, that was obscene that you accepted that. Obscene. Marpa House was the model of affordable housing in Boulder. And yet you're scrambling to do more affordable housing, the more that you're upping the value of the land in Boulder and increasing the cost to people.
Thank you, Lynn. Your time's up. Next, we have Nami Basin, Miho Shida, and Kelly Donovan. Nami.
Hi, I'm Nami Basin. I'm here today also to voice my support of the formation of a library district. I have personal stories and I can talk about my child, but really what I want to say is that the thing about libraries that's really cool is you can have two different books with two opposing arguments sitting on the same shelf and leave it up to a reader to decide what to make of the information presented to them. You can even have two different people read the same book and take away two different things. That's because libraries are democracy in its most pure form. There's no conclusion, there's no voting, there's no end of discussion. And I think that that's sometimes why there's a feeling of being affronted when individuals in our community register complaints because they perceive impropriety, misuse, or what they feel like is over-occupation by certain individuals of library space. But just like those two books on the shelf with competing perspectives, the practice of learning to live with each other's different uses of library space is also the practice of pure democracy, and it's something that we need in our community. So I believe Boulder needs to allocate resources in such a way that it's in alignment with our core values. And if you all truly value intellectual freedom, which I believe you do, I know that you'll do more than say tender words about our library, and you will make deliberate choices to ensure that all branches reopen and are well funded. I personally believe that the best way to do this is through the formation of a library district. Thank you.
Thank you, Nami. Next, we have Miho Shida, Kelly Donovan, and Nathan Seidel. Miho.
Hello, my name is Miho Shida, and I live at 6783 Idlewild Court in Gun Barrel. As one of the wealthiest communities in Colorado and the home to the state's flagship university, I think it makes civic sense for Boulder to have a healthy public library system. The library empowers and benefits all segments of our community, especially those with limited means. So why not create a robust library that we can all be proud of, not one that has to cancel Prospector, the service that delivers books to residents' mailboxes during a pandemic, or is unable to open branches for lack of funding. The place that I visited the most when I was raising my two kids was the Boulder Public Library. I have no doubt that the library instilled a love of reading to them and has helped them to become the knowledge-seeking, inquisitive young adults that they are today. I can't think of a more important function that a public institution can provide for a community than this. A healthy library is an investment in the future and has the power to shape Boulder's legacy. Therefore, I urge council to support the formation of a library district. Thank you.
Thank you. Miho. Next, we have Kelly Donovan, Nathan Seidel, and Claudia Teen. Kelly?
Hello, my name is Kelly Donovan, and I live in unincorporated Gun Barrel. Some of my earliest memories are from going to my local library and picking out books in the children's section. Since then, I've always had a love of books and immediately got a library card when I moved to Boulder 15 years ago. Once I had children, I was excited to introduce them to the children's room at the main branch, knowing that it could create fond memories for them as it did for me. Sure enough, my kids, who are now 9, 6, and 6, have such a love for books and read a ton. The library is a big part of their lives. Pre-COVID, they would go for story times, play at the main branch, and pick out books to take home. They were disappointed with the COVID shutdown, and as we just didn't have enough books in the house to keep up with their reading. They were so excited when the library opened up again and we could start putting books on hold, and even more excited when the children's room opened and they could go there and pick up their own books. I ended up getting my oldest a library card so we could help manage their request, but it's still me who has to drive across town to pick them up, which can be a challenge for me as a working mom and with the library's reduced hours. I'm in favor of the library district as I really want to see a Gun Barrel branch open as it would be a much needed addition to this area. It's quite shocking that such a wealthy and progressive community like Boulder has a library that is so underfunded, especially when library districts have been set up in other towns across the state of Colorado. As a longtime library user and supporter, I am asking the City Council to begin the formation of a library council district for Boulder to provide sustainable funding for our library as an investment to both the library and to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Next, we have Nathan Sadel, Claudia Team, and Henry Corin. Nathan?
Hello, my name is Nathan Seidel, and I am the founder of SparkFun Electronics, a business in Boulder County with 104 employees. We own and operate a 80,000 square foot manufacturing facility in Gun Barrel. In 2021, we paid $304,000 in property taxes to the county. While this amount has been increasing at a staggering rate, we would love to be taxed more for a library district. In addition, I don't know any business owners in my network who would be against increasing taxes for the library. Increased funding to a library means a more educated workforce. And to me, a 2019 survey represents the will of the people. The people that love the library in 2019 want to continue to use it. Please don't waste more time and money doing nothing. Please do something. As a business person, looking at the predicament both the library and the city are in financially, it just makes sense to form a library district. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Next, we have Claudia Team, Henry Corin, and Donna George. Claudia?
Good evening, members of council. My name is Claudia Hansen Thiem. I live in the Holiday neighborhood, and I'm speaking tonight in support of a library district. I think about the library the most as a parent, and my two children have known it since birth. It's a staple of family life in Boulder. It's a place where we've not only found books, lots of books, but also inspiration, respite, and friends. But it's so much more. When I sat down to write this comment, I started thinking about all of the other reasons I visited the library in pre-pandemic times. And I came up with a picture of the library as a center of civic life. I've walked through to see friends and neighbors' artwork on display. I listened to police chief candidates introduce themselves to the community in the Canyon Theater. And I've attended board trainings and planned Boulder candidate forums in the Boulder Creek Room. And I've even had coffee with Mayor Weaver in the Seeds Cafe, presumably because it was a neutral place to meet. Every person advocating for stable funding tonight has some version of this list, and together they weave the fabric of this community. Like many people, I was amazed when I learned that the library has maintained its high standing in the community, in fact, expanding its programming and user base despite years of stagnant funding. I did not want to believe it was that bad. But the pandemic budget crisis shows what supporters have been arguing for years. The library is the first to be cut and last to be restored when sales tax revenues decline. This is no way to treat a heart of our community. For 3 years now, advocates have asked you to greenlight a library district and to let them make the case to the public for funding that matches the library's reach and value in the community. This has always been a sensible ask, and with time, it's become more urgent. The Boulder Public Library deserves a stable financial future, and a district gets us there. Please support it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Next, we have Henry Corin, Donna George, and Sarah George. Henry?
My name is Henry Corin. I live in Table Mesa. Our libraries are the milk and honey of this town. My family visits the main library every week. In normal times, we check out around 700 books a year to read to our kids. My two young girls have learned to read with the help of our library. For them, it was a preschool. It was their go-to for education and play long before they were eligible to be students in our school district. When my kids were just 1 year old, they met other children who would grow to become their lifelong friends at a library story time. Now my girls are thriving. They have become incredible readers because of the resources the library offers. My eldest, Maya, has figured out what she wants to do when she grows up. She wants to be an author and illustrator. The library has made a tremendous difference in so many children's lives. The quality of our library will echo into the future as our children grow into responsible young adults who are less likely to require policing. The library is an essential resource that contributes to our community's mental health, where people can find sanity, meet others, get lost in a book, or work outside of their houses. As residents of South Boulder, my family would love to see George Reynolds branch reopen so we can make it to library on foot instead of a 10-minute drive. Gun Barrel also deserves its own library branch. Without adequate funding, a whole generation of Boulder's children will miss out on these sorts of opportunities. This will do serious harm to our community. A small increase in property taxes dedicated to funding our libraries will be worth every penny. I encourage those who are concerned about the tax to consider the indirect long-term benefits that a fully funded library system will have in our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Henry. Next, we have Donna George, pooling time with Sarah George and Mark George, which will give 4 minutes to Donna. I would like to confirm, Donna, that you're here, and then hear Sarah and Mark here as well.
Hi, yes. Hello, can you hear me? This is Donna George.
I can hear you, Donna. If you can have Sarah and Mark say hello.
Okay, Sarah. Hi, I'm Sarah.
Hi, this is Mark George.
Perfect. Donna, you have 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Donna George. I live in unincorporated Gun Barrel, and I strongly support a library district. The increase in taxes is worth it for me, even when I am utilizing the library much less than when my daughter was younger. Libraries provide a great service to all citizens, young and old, and creates community. I see the library as an important community amenity that needs to be supported by a reliable budget from year to year and not relegated to the whims of the city budget. The library has been neglected over the years. It is usually one of the very last items to consider in the budget and gets whatever money is left over. The creation of a library district would mean that the library would have its own budget funded by the district. I see the creation of a library district as having a great library system supported by the citizens within the district. I strongly believe that the board of directors of the newly created library district should include representatives from unincorporated areas like Niwot and Gun Barrel, the mountain communities, and not just from the city of Boulder. In the future, the independent libraries of Longmont, Louisville, and Lafayette may want to join in the district, further spreading the cost and providing for more efficiency in the cost of purchases and services. This could reduce the tax cost to all citizens and benefit all the libraries. Longmont, I hear, is looking at doing its own library district for its library, and maybe Boulder should talk to them and see if you can combine their library district with Boulder's library district. I have used the Longmont Library in addition to the Boulder, the Lafayette, and the Louisville libraries. So I think that a library district that's actually countywide would be fantastic. 200 to 300 more a year in property taxes is worth it for me, for a great investment in important library services for the Boulder County community. You know, I've been going on, recently I had $200 a month in my Comcast bill. That was just a month, which was internet, phone, and TV. And I had to try to lower that, as we all know how that goes. So to me, an investment in my community for $200, $300 a year is a strong investment, and a library is important for the community. The Gun Barrel branch should be located in the Gun Barrel Community Center plan area, close to the grocery store, the post office, etc. Today, I just saw spaces for rent in some commercial buildings across from King Soopers, or they could be in the area of shops next to King Soopers. I also want to note that when my daughter was young, she took piano lessons next to the Meadows branch. That was the branch that we mainly went to. And when we went to that, it was a weekly thing. We'd go to piano lessons, and after piano lessons, she'd go to the library and, you know, take out more books and return the books that, you know, she had taken out before. And we also went to the cafe by there, or we went to the grocery store. It was like a combined trip, and that's what I believe Gun Barrel should be. And it's important to support libraries. So I hope that all you on council will vote to start work on a library district, because I think it is the smart and the best way to go for funding for the library. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Donna. Next, we have Juana Gomez, Jeff Cahoon, and Michael Green. Juana?
Hello, I'm Juana Gomez at 1127 Cranbrook Court in Boulder. Thank you for your attention to library funding tonight at this public hearing. I am a strong advocate for our public library and for stabilizing its budget. Lately, our national discussion has been focused on infrastructure, on expanding our understanding of that term, and on paying for all that we take for granted as a basic platform for our lives. Just as we take care that our bridges and traffic lights continue to perform and allow for our transportation through town, we need to take care of our city's living room, our engine for innovation, the public library. We wouldn't think of building housing without providing it with water and sanitation. Likewise, we wouldn't think of building neighborhoods and towns without public libraries. A library district is the most reliable funding model and the most equitable. Forming a group to draft an IGA for a library district will be a step in the right direction. But in fact, forming a district by resolution would be 2 steps in the right direction. An IGA will help us arm ourselves with facts. Without it, answers to questions about the details of a library district remain murky. This is our chance to think global and act local in ways that can have tangible impact and leave a legacy for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Juana. Next, we have Jeff Cahoon, Michael Green, and Caitlin McQuaid. Jeff?
A reminder that as you're, looks like you're on.
Thank you, Sam. Mayor Weaver, City Council, can you hear me?
You're good to go, yep.
Thank you. This is Jeff Cahoon. I'm a resident of Boulder, living at 1420 Elder Avenue. And I'm president of the Boulder Area Labor Council. I want to comment from a working family's perspective. The effect of a library district is substantial. For one thing, I will confess, the Boulder Area Labor Council has been meeting for years and years in the very nice conference room in the basement of George Reynolds Library. And with Zoom, etc., we have not been meeting there. We would like to return to our own, I'll tell you that much. And the George Reynolds Library and their staff has been very kind to us over the years. It must be recognized that we need our libraries, and I must endorse the prior 2 speakers in their regard. One, yes, Boulder should explore creative alternatives to really tie into the excellent library systems in Longmont, Lafayette, Louisville. Superior, not so much. I mean, we have gaps we should fill. And an independent district can do that. And I think that's why the Labor Council definitely wants to support the idea of a library district and open up our libraries and fund them properly. With that, I'll close.
Thank you, Jeff. Next up, Michael Green, Caitlin McQuaid, and Stephen Frost. Michael?
Hello, this is Michael Green. I'm at 19th and Canyon. And first, I just want to thank you, council members, for all your hard work. This is my first time joining the Zoom marathon, and I'm blown away that you do this every week. So thank you so much. And I want to say that I'm strongly in favor of a library district as a way to create more sustainable funding for the library and to expand its services to more people in the area. Although I do deeply value all the benefits the other speakers have highlighted, I want to highlight the value the library services have brought to my small business. I've used the Building 61 makerspace to do a variety of things for my business that would otherwise not be possible. From cutting 10,000 straws on the laser cutter for use in my product to prototyping new packaging designs with the same laser cutter. The library has provided me with immense value, and I know from my interaction with other folks in the makerspace that it has provided immense value for them and their businesses as well. So with that, I request that you please support the library district so we can increase access to these wonderful programs and help other small businesses access the world-class tools that they wouldn't otherwise be able to access.
Thank you, Michael. Next, we have Caitlin McQuaid, Stephen Frost, and Kristen Eller. Caitlin?
Hi, also a first-time caller here. I'm a South Boulder resident and a regular contributor to the Library Foundation. I have a whole list of things that I love about the library that I do there, but you've gotten a pretty complete catalog of that, so I'm just going to skip to the thing that is the best thing about the library for me, which is there is not a single place in Boulder where I have felt a greater sense of belonging to a diverse community. There's every kind of people there. It's a great feeling, and I'm grateful for it every time I visit. I'm here, first of all, to thank you. You are looking at two options for providing greater and more stable funding to our library. It's clear that you recognize the library's value to our community. Secondly, I want to let you know that I support the creation of a library district over the option where the city maintains control. From what I can tell, the library district option would bring in more money. It would expand the number of people who are contributing to the library's needs, many of whom are currently getting its services for free. And it would create a governing body focused solely on the library's financial health and on its fulfillment of the community's needs. It also seems like the library district option would free up more money in the city's budget than the other option and relieve city government of the responsibility and headaches of managing the library. As an institution, the heart of a library beats in service to a free and civil society, a society whose citizens have access to resources that improve their minds and their lives. Please do the most you can to provide Boulder with the best possible library, even if it means letting someone else take control. Thanks.
Thank you, Caitlin. Next, we have Stephen Frost, Kristen Eller, and Lila Hickey. Stephen?
Good evening, Mayor Weaver, members of the City Council. My name is Stephen Frost. I'm a resident in the Holiday neighborhood in Nobo. I'm faculty at CU Boulder. I'm also vice chair of the Library Commission and founder of the Colorado Sewing Rebellion, which is of course hosted in the library's makerspace. I want to thank everybody who's taken time out of their evening to advocate for the library tonight. Thank you all so much. I'm here tonight to join them and to speak to the need for sustainable funding for our public library system. Library advocates and city commissioners have made this request to the council for years, and now is the time to form a library district. As all of you know, sales tax revenue has fallen dramatically due to COVID-19, and huge cuts have been made to keep our city in the black. And while the library accounts for less than 4% of the overall city budget, it sustained 20% of the cuts that were made citywide. Of course, our library staff may do within budgets and less staff, but still hours were cut, programs had to be shelved, and professional staff were fired. Senior positions were vacated but not replaced. And now the library does not have enough funding to return to normal operating hours at all of its branches. Highly qualified staff members with international reputations for their research and scholarship have left and were forced to move on to new opportunities in other cities. We won't get these people back. The thousands of dollars spent on recruitment, training, and development, it's all been lost. It is easy to blame the decimation of our libraries on COVID-19, but the reality is that these losses are the result of our current funding mechanism. Throughout Colorado's nearly 60 existing library districts, you will find that many of them, actually most of them, are fully open, well-staffed, and operating at near pandemic levels. Why hasn't the city formed a library district by resolution? Most members of the council value the cultural, social, and economic and civil contributions of our library, and I ask you tonight to form a library district by resolution so that we can begin the work of bringing our library up to sustainable levels of funding. Thank you all.
Thank you, Stephen. Next, we have Kristen Eller, Lila Hickey, and Eric Budd. Kristen.
Hi, Council. My name's Kristen Eller, and I'm a resident of Gun Barrel, and I'm someone who loves libraries, and I specifically love Boulder Library System. I volunteer at the Boulder Public Library, and I know we've heard from pretty much everyone that's spoken about how important libraries are, but I really don't think we can get enough of that. So I'm going to tell you a little more. As a child, I moved constantly. And do you know what's something we did every single time we moved somewhere? The first thing we did is we went to the library. We went to the library, we got our library card, and before all the boxes were unpacked at our house, before we had internet, we went to the library, we got internet access, and we read books. And that is a critical part of my childhood, and it's still a part of my life today. And libraries are an investment in our community, and they're an investment into the people of Boulder, and it enriches our city. Our libraries have been underfunded for decades, and this council, not next council, this council has the power to change that for the future children of Boulder, residents of Boulder, and the community of Boulder. 3 years ago in 2018, the Library Commission recommended forming a library district, and I support this, as you've heard many other people support this, and I hope you all support this. The formation of a library district can provide sustainable, long-term funding for our library system that will only enrich our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kristen. Next, we have Lila Hickey, Eric Budd, and then we move on into new folks with Jane Wilson. So, Lila.
Hello. Good evening, Council and staff. My name is Lila Hickey. I'm a resident of North Boulder, and I'm here to speak in favor of creating a library district. When I moved to Boulder in the spring of 2019, one of the first things I did was get a library card. Why? Because if you want to know the heart of a town, you go to its library. For libraries, as those who frequent them know, are about so much more than books. They're about ebooks and internet access, access to professional librarians to help jumpstart a student's research project, or help a retiree begin mapping their family genealogy. They are a safe space for people who don't have a safe space, or just a space for your meetup. Boulder's main library delighted me. It's a place with so much promise. But I was shocked and surprised to hear that Boulder has no library district. Coming from Fort Collins, where voters created a library district more than a decade ago, I have seen firsthand the benefits of stable funding proportionate to the growth and success of the community. The Fort Collins Library District is thriving, even in this pandemic. Boulder's library is not. Others have already quoted some of the budget reductions. I was deeply dismayed to hear we now have 30% less staff than we did almost 2 decades ago, in 2002. A library district will allow the Boulder community to directly and consistently support this precious public resource and ensure it grows in step with Boulder. I urge Council to support a library district by resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Lila. Next, we have Eric Budd, Jane Wilson, and Mitchell Garcia Morrissey. Eric.
Hello, Eric Budd. I live in South Boulder, a place where our library is currently closed. So many of the speakers tonight have really talked about the importance of the library and its services. I wanted to talk about how important it is as a public space in our community. Libraries are a place that drive equity in our community. They are a place that we fund, that anyone can go, anyone can learn, anyone can use the resources, especially people that don't have them. And I think one of the reasons I really support the regional district is because we see how we provided this service in Boulder, and that service really extends out into the county beyond the city limits. And it absolutely makes sense to provide a dedicated funding resource for not just Boulder, but the greater community as well. And that dedicated funding is incredibly important. So many people have said during the pandemic that we've essentially lost our funding because of cuts to the city budget, which could have been avoided with a funding mechanism like this. And it's just, it's a travesty to me that in this time where our budget has come under such pressure, that without this dedicated funding, we've essentially got a decision from you all to increase funding for the police force, several $1 million to enforce on homeless people experiencing homelessness, while our libraries remain closed, while people can't get access to those services. And that's why we need this kind of dedicated funding for what is a public space for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Next, we have Jane Wilson, who's already spoken to us on this, Mitchell Garcia Morrissey, and Rachel Daly. Jane?
Hi, I'm Jane Sykes Wilson, Maxwell Avenue. I've already spoken to you today, so I'm not going to repeat what I had to say. I just had one comment to add. Before this public comment, there was a discussion about creating a committee to research and find out what the community would like, whether they'd like a library district or not. My only comment is that I am a library commissioner, and I'm sitting on the 3rd library commission that has recommended this to the council. So in the discussion of creating more research around this and reaching out to more communities, I'd really ask you to look to the last 3 library commissions who have recommended this, who have looked deeply into the funding, looked at the issues, and have recommended to City Council that we move forward with a library district. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Next, we have Michelle Garcia Morrissey, and then Rachel Daly and Claire Kelly. I believe Rachel Daly has spoken to us already, but we'll start with Michelle.
Michelle is not present. I recommend we move to Claire Kelly.
Okay, sounds good.
Hi, my name is Claire Kelly, and I live in Boulder on the corner of Mapleton and Folsom. And this is my first city council meeting. It's really wonderful to be here, and thanks so much for all the work you do. I am here to support the creation of a library district. I'm the mother of 2 young children, and we love attending story time with Boulder librarians Melanie and Alice, Read With Us, which has been recorded online, been a saver about the pandemic. And I work in book publishing, so I know how essential libraries are for reader discovery. And I'm also a Master's of Library and Information Science student. And so I have an ongoing appreciation for the powerful role that our library plays in this community's social infrastructure. I'm also fascinated by the idea of the model of a library district can fund local news, which is something Longmont explored. I'm also a home delivery volunteer at the Boulder Public Library, and I see how my elderly patron really benefit from the books and she checks out each month. And I'm an enthusiastic library patron myself. One of the first things I did when I moved here was to get a library card. But so I was sad when library funding was cut when the pandemic hit, and when I learned that librarians were laid off. And I was also disappointed that as a result of the funding cut, I was no longer able to use interlibrary loan because that service was cut at the Boulder Public Library. So I packed my kids in the car and I went to Golden Library to get a library card with access to Pikes Peak's library district, so I could have access to Prospector and request books for my grad school research there. So I just want to say that, as others have said, a library district is a tried and true method of sustainably funding in Colorado, from Pueblo to Fort Collins, Colorado Springs, Estes Park. They've decided that the district is the best way to govern and fund their library. Could Boulder please do it too? Thanks.
Thank you, Claire. Next, we have Sharon Procopio and Alicia Murray. Sharon?
Hello, all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Sharon Procopio, 4954 10th Street here in Boulder. I often attend these meetings wearing my design hat as a civil engineer for various projects. And in full transparency, I've had the pleasure to work with staff on the library, the North Boulder Library, as a civil engineer on the site project. And I'm proud of the design team for including really all the stakeholders that work to get it approved for construction. But today I'm here as a citizen of Boulder for the past 15 years and a homeowner here in North Boulder in the Dakota Ridge neighborhood, and a mom of an 8-year-old who loves the library almost as much as I do. He's still sitting here next to me reading because he wanted to wait for me to finish this to put him to bed. He loves choosing library books. He loves the playground at the civic area. He took part in the library's winter reading challenge. And we followed the many COVID-friendly online events and spent the past year missing our favorite librarians and our makerspace. And we look forward to their return. And while the capital funds for the new library construction in our neighborhood are approved, without the library district, the staffing and resources to actually operate that and other libraries may not be available. We funded the structures, but not the social infrastructure that funding the library district would help secure for the longer term. And that's really important, I think, to reflect on. The libraries are a key pillar in our community, and we need to fund them if we want to help our unhoused, our kids, our lower and middle income families, and all the other varieties of citizens we have in between if we want us all to flourish rather than to flail here in Boulder. So as a library user and supporter, I strongly encourage council to take action now on the formation of a library district that can provide sustainable long-term funding for our system. You've heard it from others, and I'm here to just add on and say that I wish you all a speedy deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Next, we have Alicia Murray, and it looks like Riley Mancuso has shown up. So we'll start with Alicia and then go to Riley.
Okay, I think I am second to last. This is Alicia Murray. Nice to see you. You can't see me, but I had interviewed you for Library Commission. It's a shame. I actually had props for you all, but you can't see me, so I might have to describe that a little bit later. At this point, I imagine your brain's a little bit mushy, so I actually encourage you to go and listen, go to your email, and you can find an email from me, aliciamurray@gmail.com. And I actually sent my thoughts on this last month when I thought this meeting was happening. So obviously, many things have, most things have been covered in this public comment. I did want to speak on one thing, and it's that many moms have spoken. Interesting, mostly moms, right? I don't know how many dads spoke, but clearly I think most of us agree that early childhood education pays dividends for the long term. And so, that's one thing that a library does. But the other community that a library really serves that I see, I'm a librarian, I'm a substitute librarian in Boulder Public Library, is more marginalized communities, immigrants, people who don't have internet, and you probably didn't hear from those people because they either didn't have internet access or they didn't feel comfortable speaking. So I just want you to think about all of those people. As I think David Farnan has the best, really the best quote, that libraries are the last great unbroken promise of a democratic society. And this year, because of COVID, we're not doing that. It's definitely not equitable service. It's extremely limited service, and you have to work very hard to access services this year. I did want to point out one other thing. Oh, 18 seconds. Okay. $50,000 for another survey. Please don't do that. I can't stand the thought of that. I want you to not only form the district, I want you to campaign for this ballot measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. And our final speaker is Riley Mancuso.
Hey, Council. So yeah, I mean, so many people have spoken out tonight in support of libraries. Libraries are a universal public good. Librarians are the best people on earth. And if you give them more money, they know how to spend it for the good of the community. A library district is kind of a no-brainer, as people have pointed out. Lots of cities in Colorado, lots of regions in Colorado have them and have been using them very successfully. I also don't really understand why the city of Boulder would not want to make more people outside of the city pay for stuff. Like, that just seems like a no-brainer win-win for me. You love saying that these like 30% of library users who aren't in the city are like mooches or whatever. So like, you know, bring them in, create a library district. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's been a long night. Libraries are good. Create a library district. Makes sense. Solidarity with our sister city, Nablus, Palestine, resisting the Israeli occupation, support BDS, boycott Israel. Peace.
Thank you, Riley. And with that, we will bring the public hearing to a close and bring this back to council. So council, questions, comments, suggestions, next steps, you're up. Rachel.
All right, I'll kick us off here. So my feeling is that this council does not agree on everything, but I think that we are really good at not kicking cans down the road. So that is what I would ask us to stay true to tonight. This particular issue has really dragged on. And while we cannot control that COVID happened, we can help to make up for lost time by voting to form a district by resolution tonight. I agree with the speakers who've touted the benefits of libraries, and I will not belabor their points, except to share that I have spent a ton of time in libraries as well. And I especially appreciate that people who are most in need can get their needs met at libraries, from de facto shelters to free toddler activities. Libraries are amazing. And I firmly believe in supporting libraries as a provider of crucial social infrastructure. I also have the sense that most of us probably love and want to support libraries just like I do. And I don't know if I differ on this or not, but based on my lifetime of encounters in libraries where I have always felt safe and supported and kind of free to like whatever I like and not judged, and where I always get good advice, I just deeply trust library folks. They're telling us that forming a district by resolution is the best thing that we can do for libraries. And I'm just going to trust them on that. And so I would say, let's vote to form the district by resolution and get moving on the IGA and let voters decide. And in any event, let us not kick the can down the road to a future council or eat up more council staff and community time looking again at this threshold issue. Thanks.
May I ask you a question clarifying, Rachel?
You may.
Staff doesn't suggest that we create a district by resolution tonight. Are you suggesting we do something different than staff is recommending?
Beyond, I think that David Gear answered that all of them maybe were looking at the supposition of forming a district by resolution. And I think that's been a threshold issue that we keep coming back to on this council. And if we sidestep it, I just fear that we will have to revisit it. So yeah, that's what I'm asking us to do, is to form a district by resolution. And my preference would be to get it done by the October timeline, so that the next council doesn't have to get up to speed and we have another year of studies and more information getting outdated. So yeah, that's what I'm asking for.
And
thanks.
If I might add, I think one thing that would be helpful for staff is in attachment C, there's a couple of work plans related to library district formation. And I talked about it a little bit earlier in my presentation, that there's one that starts it sooner, one that starts it later, and then we also proposed a municipal option. So to the extent that you could give us some guidance on our work plan, or on a work plan, that would be appreciated.
Thank you, David. Aaron, and then Mirabai.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that Rachel said. I mean, we all know what wonderful things libraries are and what a great equalizer they are in terms of providing access to knowledge for everyone. And so many people in public testimony spoke eloquently about that. So I won't attempt to repeat all of those marvelous sentiments. But I think it's really compelling that the experts in this area are all telling us that a district is the right way to go. So our current library commission, the last library commission, the commission before that, have all endorsed this unanimously as the best way forward for our library system. And it's written into our library master plan, their recommendation as well. Also, the very hardworking folks in the Boulder Library Foundation who've been supplying enormous amounts of critical funds to the library for many years and have stepped up enormously in the last year during the pandemic as well. Also unanimously recommend a library district. And 100% of our speakers tonight were in favor and with many inspiring words from folks from the local area labor council and to local residents to people in unincorporated Boulder County. I thought it was quite inspiring to hear from a number of people outside the city who are users of the library that are not currently taxed and who are saying, form a district and add our taxes, please, to the tax base of the district. I thought that was really impressive. So I do think it's the best track forward for sustainable funding for the library. I hope we move forward on it expeditiously. It is a well-worn pathway. There are many library districts in the state, and Fort Collins most recently did an almost identical move 10 years ago, and it's been extremely successful. So I agree with Rachel about not kicking the can down the road. And to David's point, let's do that quicker time frame, to move forward. Somebody referenced the question about binding a future council. Future council, if they really felt compelled to, could always undo something if a majority felt like they really had to. But I think we can go ahead and move forward on our own without doing anything improper. So I hope we'll take a good first step tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Aaron. Mirabai, and then Adam. Mirabai.
Mine was just a question. Does staff have a page they could put up in terms of what they want answered from council? Sorry, I didn't know if there was a slide for that. It'd just be helpful to see it for a moment.
Whoever's running the presentation, put up the motion slide. I think it's around 11 or 12. Thank you. And just to put a little extra on this, with the library district motion, we didn't specify. Frankly, we wanted to hear from the council in terms of which approach you wanted to take. But we do have two different options, as I described just a few minutes ago. One that would have the council taking action this fall, and one that would a work plan that would have council taking action next summer.
Mirabai, did that answer your question?
Yeah, so I don't see.
So under the second one, library district governance and funding, there are two options, one of which has a district formed in October, one of which has a district formed in summer of 2022. So there's two options shown, but the second one has two different versions.
Yeah. So there's no option then to put it to a vote about the library district. The only vote that would go on the ballot is for the municipal governance and funding. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, actually, eventually they both go to the ballot. The municipal funding option would be basically a TABOR and the necessary charter amendments that you would need to do a municipal funding option. With the library district, the way that the process would work is the council and the county commissioners would pass resolutions forming the district. As part of that, you would appoint a board of directors that would operate the library district, or that would basically be the governing body for the library district. so that now you've got a government. We would negotiate the transitional IGA. And then after that, once we had that part done, then the library district would put a ballot measure on to raise a property tax, a Tabor measure. And that's how the voters would vote if you were going the resolution route.
And so sorry, I just want to make sure we're getting this right. So is there a reason we can't put it to the ballot first to even find out if the community, I understand that we just had a ton of people sounding like they were for it, but I've heard so much against it too, that before we go do all of that work, there's not just a way to put it on the ballot to find out if we even want to create the governance?
Well, when we all got together in February to talk about the library district, I think we went through there's two approaches. One, the residents within the district can circulate a petition and then ask the county commissioners to put the question of whether to form a district on the ballot. And I think that David Fernan earlier was talking about the fact that the Boulder Library Champions, in fact, created and circulated such a petition. And then rather than, basically go through and have an election, they worked with the city manager and, various council members to say, hey, let's rather than push this onto the ballot, let's have a more broad, encompassing conversation about how library services should be governed and funded. So that's where we are right now. I think in February, what I took away from the council's discussion was, I heard you guys say, we don't want to talk about petitioning anymore. We want to talk about either doing it by resolution and then the subsequent Tabor election, or a municipal funding option. And that's what we're here tonight.
Okay. All right. Thanks, David. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Adam.
Thanks, David. One of the pushbacks I've heard is, that we're giving up the library as an institution. Is there any sort of way, even if we're forming a library district, that we can maintain the library as a city, just the property itself owned by the city, and rent it for like $1 a year or something along those lines? Is that a possibility still?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and that'll be something that will be the transition of what will be negotiated. But it could be a long-term lease arrangement. It could be a sale. It could be just a gift to the district once they have a revenue source. And from, kind of my understanding of what I've learned from reading about library district formation, in almost every instance, when the district is formed, the municipality either gives the assets to the library district, or they do some type of long-term, lease with nominal consideration. And I believe Kim Setter is on the call. He's a much better expert on this than I am. But I believe that there was one instance where the library district or the city actually sold its assets at more of a fair market value.
Yeah, that's all the information I need. I just want to make sure that that route is still an option if we were to go the district route.
Bob.
Yeah, just following up on Adam's good question. So I just want to make sure that I know we've been through this a bunch of times, but this is complicated stuff. If council formed a district at some point in time, the trustees are appointed and the city and the trustees negotiate an IGA. What happens if they don't reach agreement? So let's say, per Adam's point, there's a sticking point on value of assets or some other detail. What happens if there's not a meeting of the minds?
Well, I would ask Kim Setter to turn his microphone and his camera on right now. But from what I understand, just to start with, there's a 90-day time frame in the statute to actually negotiate this. I don't think, when the formations that I've looked at, I don't know that anybody's made that timeline. So that often gets extended and they work a deal. And Kim, do you have some thoughts that you would like to add to the conversation?
No, I think to directly answer Councilman Yates' question, the assets belong to the city. If there's no agreement, the assets stay with the city and the district has nothing.
Okay, thanks, Kim. And then just kind of follow-up question for either one of you. I think we've talked before about the ultimate question, of course, is the tax question. And so this goes to the voters on a Tabor tax question next year or at some point in the future. And if it passes, obviously, then they're off and running. If it fails, I think you've told us that some district formations have said, okay, well, you get 2 goes at it or 3 goes at it. Where is that embedded, that kind of how many times they can ask for tax? And then what happens? Is there a kind of a self-destruct that is in the ordinance that forms the district? Is there a provision that says, and if it doesn't pass, get funding by 2025, it automatically dissolves? Or once a district's formed, it exists forever and council no longer has jurisdiction over it, even though there's no money and there's no transfer of assets?
You're exactly right. That your formation resolution is where that's a condition of the existence of the district. And I believe Mr. Gear and the city's lawyers have drafted in the sample that there's several attempts at getting funding through 2024. Of course, they're just pulling numbers out of the hat at this point because it's up to you to decide. If there's no funding at that point, the district automatically dissolves.
Great. Thanks, Kim. That was it.
Mark.
I appreciate all of the speakers tonight. I want to point out that I'm not sure there's anybody who's against libraries or who doesn't value our libraries as a cherished community asset and almost beyond price in terms of their value to us. But to me, that's not the only issue. Timing is an issue for me. I would not want to see the ballot measure, the Tabor ballot measure, coming on this fall. I think we have a heavy enough lift in terms of the prospective community culture and safety tax renewal, and I think that's a critical measure for this city in terms of other infrastructure needs that are not being met to the tune of about 300 million at this point. So I really don't want to do them both at one time. In terms of the actual agreements, the IGA itself, I still think there are a number of questions that need to be answered and negotiated, and I'm concerned about those. Do we convey assets, which I would not be in favor of, at least the buildings? Do we lease them? Do we lease them for $1 a year? If the district is raising $20 million, is there a good argument for not paying a fair market value on the rental? Or if there is, let's understand what that is. I'm a little concerned, did I correctly read the memo, David, that if we move forward quickly this year, that a couple of city departments would have to actually outsource the work that they're going to do to stand this up?
Well, I would, so from the perspective of the city attorney's office, we stand ready to implement whatever direction we get from the council. Now, speaking for finance and the library, I would just ask them to pipe up in terms of what their own work plans are for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, David,
Kara?
we stand ready as well to do whatever council wishes.
Can somebody from finance chime in?
Hi, sorry, this is Kara Skinner.
We would just be challenged if it really began straight away in June through the fall. And that's why we said if it did, we would probably have to contract with someone to help us meet some of the needs because of the timing with the annual budget process and staffing realities of the staff that we have right now.
Can you give me an order of magnitude? Is it one person consulting for $5,000 or is it a significant outlay?
We're not exactly sure right now. You know, I think we'd have to probably talk with possibly Kim Cedar, who's on this call. He's done this for a number of districts of what type of support is out there and what the price tag might be. I think HR would be similarly challenged and might need some, and I think they do think they would need some assistance to work on what the input that they would need to provide into the IGA committee with regard to the transition of employees.
All right, so I would have some.
So we would, I guess I don't know if it would be 10,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. We haven't really explored it. And I think we just don't have a good feel for what the time commitment would be.
That's an area of some concern. In a financially strapped moment in history. If it's de minimis, you know, that concern goes away. If it's substantial, I would have a little more concern about it. You know, I understand the impatience with this. One speaker basically said, just do it. And that's a great sports slogan, but I'm not sure it's a good methodology for governance. And I would want to be a little more measured than sort of just doing it. So I'd like to know what's going to be involved in terms of extra expenses. I'd like to get some resolution on some of these questions and issues and I'll get a better feel for exactly what it is we're approving. And having said that, I'm still ultimately, you know, prepared to have this go in front of the voters of Boulder, and they will decide whether they wish to tax themselves for the library. They very well might. It's possible they won't, but that's a decision of the electorate, and I'm happy to get it in front of them. I'm just a little concerned about the timing and the expense. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Kim, would you like to weigh in and let us know how much it costs for our finance department?
Yes. In the beginning, there really isn't a lot of cost because the IGA is mostly conceptual, dealing with how a transition would take place once the funding is approved. And then that allows you to have something that you can campaign on because you've got it pinned down. Where the real cost for the city would come in would be later when you're going to need legal work to transition assets and employees and all of those things, but that wouldn't be until after there's a successful election.
So Kim, if I could colloquy on that, which successful election? Do you mean the tax election?
Yes.
Right, but wouldn't we need to have a plan for that transition? Because as I look at the option A or option B, there's a para piece of this, the Public Employee Retirement Association. So wouldn't some of these financial and personnel items need to be known before the Tabor vote?
Yes, in a conceptual way, though. So what it would say about the employees is that the library district is going to hire, that the city is going to let all the library employees go. The district is going to hire them. You already know what the cost of that is in terms of what the district needs to know. And it will take over and utilize para. And you already know what that cost is. So on the district side, they know what the expenses are. On your side, you know what you're moving away from your finances.
Could you explain why it usually takes more than 90 days to get an IGA worked out after a resolution is passed? If it's as simple as you describe, I would think the IGA part would be like a cookie cutter piece.
Yep. It usually takes longer because you take some time to inventory all the different assets, inventory the employees, and include that in the IGA, a list of exactly what you're dealing with. And mostly that's so that you as the city council know what you're transitioning so that you can determine how you want to do it. Is it $1 a year? Is it fair market value? Is it a sale? And so there's not a lot, there's some back and forth to you while you determine what the city can and is willing to do to support the library. And that just takes time. So 3 months is not a lot of time considering the back and forth that takes place.
And then, go ahead.
In the IGA, it's not very difficult. In fact, the one that's in your packet is pretty comprehensive already. It's based upon ones we've done in the past several times.
And then, well, I've lost my thought. We got 2 more folks, Rachel and then Aaron.
Just a couple thoughts on the, dollars and cents of forming this and getting to an agreement. It seems that we always hear that staff time is kind of stretched thin. So I wonder, might there be outsourcing regardless of what months we choose to do this? Like I know, and it's sort of routine with the city attorney's office. We're already planning at the subcommittee level, at least, or discussing that there will be some outsourcing just due to people coming and going. So I guess I don't know that that's a huge deal, and I would welcome feedback from staff on, like, is that abnormal? Is that a huge concern? Is it possible that if you got to this in January of 2022, you'd still need some extra help? And then also would note that time is also staff money. So if we decide to revisit this again and slow it down and have 3 more meetings like tonight's, that's also eating staff time, and that does cost our organization real dollars, and it costs, again, the community, staff, and us all a lot of time.
Aaron and then Mary. Aaron?
Yeah, I just wanted to, Mark, if you don't mind, just offer a couple of follow-up thoughts to your points. I think one of those, I think all the options in front of us involve a Tabor vote in 2022. I think I heard pretty clearly from staff in the memo that we could start the overall process earlier rather than later, but that we would still need to wait until 2022 to put a vote to the people. So David, right, I mean, that's all our options include a 2022 vote at the soonest. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes, Aaron, you're right, and I thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So starting earlier doesn't mean a 2021 vote for taxes anyway. So we can start earlier on that side. And just that I agree that there are a lot of details that need to be worked out, and that would be what the IGA development process would hammer out, right? There'd be a subcommittee that would work that through, and then it would be subject to approval of council as a whole. So you totally agree, we have to work those through, but the process incorporates time for that. And if we started earlier, then we have more time to work through the details and make sure we get them right and we get the support of council. So a couple thoughts there.
Mary, your hand is down. Did you have something you wanted? Okay. All right, well, I'll just weigh in here briefly. I do want to proceed with the district pathway. I am more inclined to go with option B than option A. When I look at what this council needs to complete, we not only have our normal budget cycle, which will be especially difficult this year because of the recovery from COVID and the uncertainty about our projections, what kind of recovery we're going to have. So we have the budget remaining in front of us, and all the discussions we might have around policing and homelessness that would go with that. Then we have the funds that we've got from the American Rescue Plan Act that are coming in that we are just beginning to start to wrap our heads around what to do. There's CU South. If we intend to move forward with that, that's going to take a lot of council time, a lot of staff time, and a lot of outreach. And when I look at 2 of the 3 of these, and potentially the 3rd, those all heavily involve finance staff. So I'm prepared tonight to move ahead with the district formation pathway, but I'm inclined to use option B. that staff has proposed. I further think that that gives us the time and the space to do a good job rather than trying to rush for an October deadline, which is an odd time to be doing it. One of the last actions this council would take would be to form a district that this council will then not weigh in on, at least not the folks who aren't running again or reelected. So I'm not quite sure why we would try and create a fire drill to do this in this year when in fact the vote won't be till 2022 anyway. So if we've accepted that the vote won't be till 2022, I cannot imagine why we would kick this whole process off in this year. I'd also say that the community culture safety tax, we're going to need to tee that up. That will also have finance folks in it. It will take a significant amount of council time to set that up and move it forward and campaign for it if that's what we choose to do. So when I look at everything, I think staff has given us quite a good option here, which is option B. And we would give certainty that that's the pathway that we are directing staff to prepare for. So I am prepared personally to support the district formation pathway, but on the option B recommendation by staff. With that, let me see, I think it's Mark and then Mirabai. Mark.
Yeah, I would also be prepared to move down the path towards a district. There seems to be a lot of support for it, and I do want to put it in front of the electorate at an appropriate moment to get their determination. But I would also choose option B in terms of timing.
Thank you, Mark. Mirabai.
I just want to be clear one more time, and again, maybe for me or maybe for people who are watching. So let's say we went with B, and this is for staff, I guess. The government body would be formed. They would work out all of the information, and then would it come to council first, or would it just go directly to the voters and the voters could then vote it up or down?
It would go to the council first. So the first step would be that you would, well, first, the main advantage of option B, if there's an advantage there, is that there would be more upfront community engagement before you took action on the resolution. So it would give us the more time to do that. So hopefully we would kind of finish up the community conversation about kind of where everybody's landing in terms of the district. In the summertime of 22, you would pass the resolution. Hopefully, and we would probably have a pretty good plan already kind of laid out. And thereafter, we would after the resolution, we would do the IGA or appoint the board of directors and then do the IGA. And that would set the basis for the Tabor election in the fall of 22.
Okay, so when it comes to council, so let's say council votes it forward, then it goes to as a Tabor on the ballot as a Tabor measure. And then if people voted no on it, then it would go away and we go back to the drawing board. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty well. You would still have the IGA, and you still may have kind of basically a district that has no assets and has no money. And that kind of goes to how many times in the, when we do the IGA, how many opportunities would you give the district to go back to the voters? Because they could go back to the voters in 23 and make the same request. How many times do you do that before you say, we're all done with the district conversation and we're going to look at something else for finance for the library?
Okay, so what I'm ultimately hearing you say and where I'm trying to get with this is that it ultimately is up to the residents of Boulder, whether or not, so even if we move forward tonight with B, option 2B, it's ultimately up to the residents of Boulder whether or not they vote this in or not. It's not council doing this. That's correct?
That's correct. And it goes beyond Boulder a little bit. It's to all the voters within the district boundaries.
The Boulder County then?
Yeah. Well, not all of Boulder County. The proposed district, would include like the eastern side would be kind of the Gun Barrel Niwot area, and then it would go up into the mountains. And then at some point you hit the boundary for the Nederland Library District. So we would kind of be everything in between.
Right, that general map that you guys had showed us back at one of the meetings.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, that's where I wanted to get, was that it's up to the voters if we move forward with this direction. So thank you very much for clarifying for me.
Mary and then Bob. Mary.
Thanks, Sam. So I'm inclined to move forward with the district path as well, and to support option B for all of the reasons that Sam mentioned in the context of everything that's already going on. And I've been on council long enough to know that when you bombard the community with way too many things, there's just so much bandwidth that people can put their attention towards. So that's one thing. I think it would be advantageous in terms of getting a read on a broader slice of the potential electorate on how they feel about the district, and doing that outreach and getting a better read on that prior to forming the district. So I also, one of the speakers spoke about Longmont forming a district. Perhaps there is some advantage to having a little more time to have some conversations there. And, you know, backing up just a little bit about the outreach, we also know that there were a lot of, I think, legitimate questions that were raised with respect to the previous survey. Very, very legitimate questions. So I would like to see better outreach and get a better read on the electorate as well. So I think I had read, or maybe staff had mentioned, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the commissioners didn't have the space on their work plan to do it as early as option A proposed. Is that something I'm making up, or did I hear something? Could somebody just help me out on that one?
I would call upon Janet Michaels, if she's on the call, if you could turn your microphone on. Janet has been our primary contact with Boulder County staff.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Council. Janet Michaels with the City Attorney's Office. I don't remember them saying that it is not on their work plan, that, that the county didn't have time to do that. I don't remember that being a part of the conversation that I had with county staff.
Okay, great. Thank you. In any case, I think that we would be better off to do some real due diligence in terms of formulating the IGA and primarily, you know, picking the committee for the IGA process, giving ourselves enough time and thought to do that well and make sure that we have a really good group of people working on it. So that's another piece of it. So for all those reasons, I would go with option B.
You, Mary. We got Bob and then Adam. Bob.
I'm exactly where Mary and Sam and Mark are on this. I think that we do have a lot of community outreach and engagement to do. And on top of the laundry list of big things that Sam mentioned, we also have one or two pretty big site reviews that are coming down the road. And we still have to wrap up community benefit, and we still have use tables to do. So we have a very busy 5 months remaining. I just don't see how we could jam this decision in, or at least do it justice in between now and October. And I'm not, as Sam said, I'm not sure what the magic of October is if we're not going to put this to the voters into November 2022 at the earliest. So I think we should do the type of engagement that Mary talked about. And I would actually take it a step further. I would like to see, I'm not sure if I'd be, hard to know how I'll feel in 6 or 9 months when this comes back to us, but I'd like to see, you know, council at the moment of formation actually have a form of IGA that's presented. I wouldn't want to just appoint some people as trustees and then hope that we could reach agreement and find out there were 2 ships passing in the night under some sort of 90-day shot clock. I would actually, at the moment of formation, actually have council's preferred substance of an IGA on the table and say, hey, dear trustees, you're hereby appointed. This is the IGA we would accept. We can talk about the margins, but this is what we would want. And it may be some of the things that Mark talked about, and maybe some other things, but I would want the IGA to be kind of effectively pre-approved by council and the community. And then the trustees can look at it and say, yeah, we can live with this, or no, we can't, rather than just leaving it to an open-ended negotiation. But I agree with the previous speakers. I think the plan B on the alternative timeline that David laid out makes the most sense.
Thank you, Bob. Adam, and then Junie. Adam?
Yeah, I also agree. I seem to best recall in our meeting last February that this is the approach we were sort of reaching consensus on. So I think it's good we follow through with that. Plus, I do think we need the extra time. And to keep with council tradition, I think we just have to make sure the next 2 years of work plan are already decided before the next council even gets voted in. So that just, seems to happen each council. So why not keep it going?
Thank you, Adam. Junie?
Well, I think at this time, I already see where we are heading when it comes to B. I mean, I would have preferred A, but I see that the will of council is for B. The only thing is, what if it's going to be a new council? They might decide not to go any further, and it's going to be a lot of time wasted. So I would have preferred just putting it to the ballot, create a ballot measure for voter approval. And I think as well, when I think of community outreach, I think a ballot measure as well serve as a level of community outreach. It's either it's passed or it's not, because people choose not to vote it in. So it is what it is that we will be moving with B, but I hope that it works. I think the library districting is very important. And I think just hearing from community members, and I remember, there was a time where I didn't have a job and I worked at the library as a volunteer. So libraries are really important. And I know we all agree that libraries are important, but I wish we were moving much faster, but I understand the constraint of times and some of the challenges that we may face, so.
Thank you, Junie. And if I could ask for a motion to extend the meeting past 11.
So moved.
Second.
Any objections besides Mark? Okay.
I object tonight. I'm sorry.
Seeing none, Mirabai and then Rachel. Mirabai.
So I'm along kind of the same lines as Junie. Is I would have preferred to go with option A, but I think David has at least put my concerns to rest, and knowing that the voters ultimately will get to decide, that's really where I wanted to go with this. I didn't think it should be something that council made that decision on, because this is such a big decision. I hope that we keep the asset of the library within our control, meaning renting it out. I would not ever support it in any other option with it being a district, but I think it's I just think it's something that is so important to Boulder that to relinquish control is inconceivable to me. So I guess I can go with the will of council for option 2B.
Rachel.
Just a question. I think I'm maybe more optimistic on that things don't always have to be as slow as we plan them to be. And I appreciate like Mary's point that you don't want to rush things, and I get that. But what if staff gets into this and they're like, oh no, this is much faster than we thought it was going to be? Like, we can just move through this. Do they have to go slow, or by saying option B, if it just goes faster, can it come back to us in October? I don't know who that's to. I'm just asking, like, is it possible that it just flows quickly and wow, here it is? See
David.
Well, I think, I guess anything is possible. I'll just start with that. But, the way that we laid it out in the memo was we laid it out as a series of work tasks that we would do. And really, it's a difference in how we engage the community. With option B, the second option, option B, it's more, there's more engagement before you actually form the district. So I think that, you know, with that being the case, my hope would be that it will make everything kind of along the lines of what Councilmember Yates said. After you take the, you know, you pass the resolution to form the district, that it will make everything after that go much faster. And hopefully with much more consensus.
Thank you, David. And David Farnan.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. Because from your study session on February 27th, there seemed to be consensus from council that they wanted to begin the discussion about what the contents of the IGA would be. And I believe that came from you, Mayor Weaver, that you wanted to have knowledge in advance. And Bob Yates, Councilor Yates, kind of seconded that, and then just now mentioned additionally wanting to know. So is it your instruction to staff? Does council intend to form that committee and for staff to begin working on a draft of an IGA, which would then be, you know, wrapped from the city? Because at February 27th, the discussion was forming a committee of people who would responsibly represent the interest of city council, the interest of the library, the interest of all these different groups. And I'm wondering if you're instructing us to begin that work in 2021 or to wait for that work to 2022, because as David has pointed out multiple times, I think that crunches our timeline again, right? So if you go back to waiting entirely to 2022, we're going to be crunched with a timeline to get a ballot measure in place and an IGA if we haven't begun that discussion.
So David, just in a colloquy to your question, I was just looking at option B as presented by staff. And option B as presented by staff has that IGA process committee put together in December of 21, presumably after the new council is seated. I suppose there's a hybrid between A and B, because A has that IGA process committee put together in June. I suppose we could do something in between, but I was just going with the staff outline when I suggested option B, which would have that IGA committee seated December 21, and then it would have 7 months, as I read it, it would have 7 months at least to get that IGA to the point people would vote on it. So that's only if I'm reading the staff recommendation correctly. Does that make sense? Are you suggesting a hybrid between the two, or what was your question, David?
My question, yeah, I was wondering what it was you were wanting to do. And so to be clear, and David Gear can correct me on this, I don't believe there is a staff recommendation. We're putting options in front of you to look for direction. So
maybe I misspoke. I just meant the option that was described by staff, option B in the packet. Yeah.
We tried to work out the work plan scenarios, which was the request in February 27th about how we could achieve these ends. Yeah, any hybrid would work as well. It all depends upon what council wants us to do.
Great. Hang on with just one sec. Aaron and then Mary. Aaron?
Yeah, well, first, David, I think I heard you say that option B involves more public engagement. Did I hear that right?
I think that's my understanding, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm just a little confused, because option A, it actually involves a longer time frame. But anyway, I hear that the will of council is to do the kind of option B time frame, and we can work with that. I appreciate essentially consensus on moving in the district direction. I think that's fantastic. I think it's worth considering a little bit of a hybrid, though. I'm hearing from the majority of council a desire not to pass a resolution, this year. But if we could lay some of the groundwork for what an IGA might look like, and not kind of do a standing start in December sometime, right before the holidays, I think we might give ourselves a little bit more room for a roomier timetable in 2022. So hearing that there's no kind of 100% wed to exactly option A or option B, I just suggest that we get a bit more of a start in 2021. well, it's fine to mostly follow the option B timetable, but.
Yeah. And we can do that. I mean, it's a guideline. You know, I think that the option B is more about when you do the resolution. What we do beforehand, we can start that earlier. And in fact, part of the intent of just putting together sample IGAs and resolutions that are in the packet tonight was to start that, really to start that conversation.
And that was very helpful having those written out. It helped me visualize them for sure.
Mary.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. That's a good segue into a proposal I wanted to make. And so my proposal is that we form the committee in the October timeframe, and that we take our time forming the committee. Then we would have this council appointing that committee, and they could get going, as soon as some date between December and, let's see, when is that? Anyway, we form the committee in October, and that gives us a little time to really be thoughtful about that formation. So that's my proposal. And then the rest of the schedule can fall into place with that.
Yeah. And Mary, I just want to colloquy and agree. I like the idea of seating the IGA committee, because it does demonstrate that this council, we're not just saying it and then punting it to another council. We're starting the process within this council. So I think that's a helpful suggestion, and it's like along the lines of what Aaron said as well. So I'd be happy with a hybrid of that sort. I think it's a good idea. And I don't know if there's anything magic about October. Maybe September would work as well. Just something, after the break, after we get back, and once we've got our feet under us with all the things we have to do, maybe we can then, as council, say when we want to recruit and seat that committee. But I agree. I think that would be good to do on this council, seat that committee.
I suggested October because I was thinking September is when we're talking about budget. We start having the budget conversations, and there's going to be some tough conversations around that, as well as all of the things that you mentioned. There's CU South, there's the site reviews, there's the community benefit, there's the use tables, all of that stuff. And we can hopefully get the majority of that stuff out of the way, and then in October have some space. And then, maybe staff spends a little bit of time putting out the announcements for applications to the committee. I'm not sure what that process looks like.
Mark?
Yeah, for all the people who participated tonight, I hope you will see that the takeaway tonight is not that we did not pass a resolution this evening, but as I look at it, all 9 members of council have indicated a willingness to go down the path of creating a library district and putting that in front of the voters of Boulder. And so, I hope people who are participating tonight and listening will not think that this is somehow punting it down the road. It's simply a reflection of the workload that staff has and that we have between now and the next council, and we're fairly heavily burdened as is. But every member of this council has expressed a willingness to move down that path, and I think that should be the primary takeaway from this evening's conversation. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. So I would invite a motion, maybe Mary or Aaron would like to make it, that synthesizes the discussion we've just had, and maybe we can move ahead. I will just point out, Mark, to your point and to an earlier question I asked, there was no idea that tonight we would pass a resolution that would form a district. That was not in front of us. It wasn't a staff recommendation. It was just that we pick a pathway if we want to go in that direction and give staff direction about a schedule. So just for what it's worth, I don't think we were ever likely to pass a district formation resolution tonight just to launch a work plan. I just want to make that clear to people listening as well.
But just a colloquy on that, it's that we were getting a number of comments that were basically suggesting to us that we act now, act immediately. And yes, I understand that was not in contemplation for us. But to the extent that people have made those comments and feel disappointed that we did not act, I think there's good reason for that, in addition to it not being part of the scope of what we were going to do this evening.
Great. Bob?
Yeah, as long as we're clarifying, why we're doing what we're doing. While all the speakers tonight I think all the speakers tonight were advocating for formation of a library district. Community should also know that we received a few dozen emails from people in the community who were opposed. So I would say that the emails were probably 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 in favor. So there was certainly a more people that contacted us either in writing or this evening who were in favor. It wasn't an absence of opposition. There was a significant number of people. I think those are the people that we want to hear from, in addition to the proponents under the community engagement that Mary was talking about. I think we want to open it up and listen to everybody in the community and not limit it to those people who happen to speak at a public hearing on a particular night.
Thank you, Bob. We've got Mary, Rachel, and Aaron. Mary?
I'm going to put a motion on the table. So I move that we direct staff to begin work to create a ballot measure for voter approval for a new dedicated municipal property tax to fund library services using option B as the main path forward, with the formation of the committee in the October timeframe.
Thank you. May I ask a clarifying question?
Please.
You said a dedicated municipal tax.
I was reading the motion language. Did I say, I said a dedicated municipal property tax.
It should be on the motion page on page 2 of the memo. If you're looking for the district one, it is.
It's the first one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
No.
I was thinking back on the slide, but all right. So erase what I just said. Strike that from the record or whatever. So I move that we direct staff to begin the work to form a library district by city council resolution using option B as the main work plan schedule, with the exception of a formation for the process committee in October of 2021.
Okay, good. Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Okay, a motion and a second. If it's okay, Rachel and Aaron, I'll let Mary speak to her motion and then go to you. Mary, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I think that this is the right way to go. I do think that we need to conduct more outreach that is a little bit more widespread. I think a lot of the outreach has mainly focused within the city of Boulder. So we need to reach out to the broader community that the district would consist of. So that's an important piece. I think also that to go with the shorter time frame would put a lot of pressure, not just on staff, especially finance staff, but on council as well. Our schedules, our meetings are pretty packed already with a lot of stuff that we need to get done in this council. And so I see forming the process committee as a kind of hybrid way forward.
Very good. And if it's okay, I'll go to Rachel and then Aaron, and then I'll come back to you, Mark, to speak to your second. Rachel.
Well, so I didn't realize I'd be like going after the motion, and was more responding to Mark Wallach's last statement about, community members and people who maybe didn't understand what we were doing tonight, and that we weren't really teed up to form a district by resolution. I also said that, and so I want to make it clear that I wasn't misinformed or underinformed or saying that accidentally. You know, I requested in February that we receive a staff recommendation on this, on whether staff wanted us to form a district by resolution, and we didn't get a recommendation. I don't know if staff couldn't do that or what that was about, but given that we didn't have a specific recommendation, it was entirely within the scope of possibility for tonight to have that vote. So I just wanted to make that clear. And we did have a public hearing, and it would have been a very fair thing to vote on tonight. And also, just to clarify, I have not received dozens of emails opposing this. I saw a handful, I feel like, in the last day or two, but not dozens. So just wanted to clarify those points, and I will support. I'm glad that we're moving forward with this, and hopefully not creating too much delay. So we'll be supporting Mary's motion.
Aaron.
Yeah, I just wanted to address the email question. I did a real quick search on district in my council email box. I think maybe there was maybe 12 or 15 in opposition. I did a quick count of maybe 80 in support. So I think it was a little more skewed than maybe. But we could do an official count maybe. But I think it was definitely had some opposition. But I think it was definitely more skewed in support. And then I am happy to support the motion. I'm really glad we're moving forward with the library district, and I look forward to the formation of that committee in October.
Thank you, Aaron. Mark, do you want to speak to your second, and then I'll go to Bob?
Yeah, very, very briefly. I obviously support Mary's motion. I think it's appropriate for staff given their constrained resources at this time. But I also think it's important to actually get the show on the road, and I think that's what we're doing tonight. And I'm very supportive of doing that. So I am happy to vote in favor.
Thank you, Mark. Bob.
I just wanted to observe that some of us receive direct emails from constituents that come to individual council members that don't go to the council general mailbox.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. I thought you were just talking about the general council emails. Thanks for the clarification, Bob.
No,
Mary.
Yeah, I just wanted to also add that two of the emails that I did see come through were emails that were asking people to email council in favor of the library district. I did not see any emails that were going out to people to vote not in favor of or to speak not in favor of the library district. So that gives me a little bit of pause that there has been encouragement for one path forward and doesn't seem to be encouragement for the other one. Not to say that there is or there isn't, but I think that is cause enough to want to do our due diligence with respect to outreach.
Very good. And before I call for a vote, I'm just going to make one small comment. I'm glad that we're moving forward with this. We may as well get the IGA worked out because those details are important, and take it to council and then to the voters. I will point out that one of the challenges that this is going to face in 2022 will be a likely county ballot measure. And now one or more of these could come this year. But I do know that the county has got at least 3 ballot measures that are being discussed, one around mental health funding, one around affordable housing, and one around transportation. So another thing that I'd encourage everyone who is hopeful about a library district to do is to think about what that's going to look like, and how whatever level of mill levy is ultimately kind of tested with voters for acceptability and run, probably should contemplate whatever the county's thinking about doing in 2022. So that's just kind of a contextual comment that there's a few things to do here. Get the IGA right, figure out what the city is going to do as far as assets and employees and the transfer, And I do believe that there's good models for all of that. But then the next part of this is getting the voters to weigh in on taxing themselves. And it's not free money. It will create room in the city budget if we have a district funding the library for sure, but it is a tax burden. And so, you know, it is just worth thinking through what the other asks are going to be of taxpayers, both in Boulder and in the district. With that, if there are no more comments, I will call for a vote on Mary's motion. Anyone want to weigh in? Okay. All in favor of the motion on the table, raise your hand. Oops, mine's up. 1, 2, 3. It is unanimous. All right. Well, congratulations. Thank you, staff. Thank you, both David Farnan and David Gear and the rest of staff who supported this. It is good to see this moving forward. And I see David would like to say something.
First of all, I just wanted to recognize our staff team. It took a great deal of coordination to bring this forward to you this evening. And I would also just like to thank the council for the direction, because I truly do believe that the tweaks and modifications that you made to the work plan that we put together has made it a much better product. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Any other comments from council before we close this item? Okay, with that, this item is done. Alicia, I believe we're at the end. Is there anything else we have?
Alicia, you're muted.
Yeah, you keep muting.
I'm working on that.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
Hold on. All right. No, sir, I think that was our last item.
Okay, very good. So debrief and comment, Adam?
Yeah, I just wanted to flag something. We got an email update from the beginning of the meeting about the gun barrel IGA, and the commenter was actually correct that it was expiring in 15 years, not 20. Jacob Lindsay pointed that out. So that's a discussion we'll have to have in the future too.
Very good. And I
just wanted to put that out there publicly.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Adam. That's a good reminder. Yep, Jacob did by email let us know that he was mistaken and that staff will be coming back to us with information on that. So thank you, Adam, for that. Aaron.
Yeah, thanks. No, I was just going to add that staff is working on it now that it's on their radar. So thanks.
And thanks to the public who commented tonight, both at open comment and the public hearing. Your passion is noted and we appreciate your input for sure. With that, I'll gavel this meeting closed at 11:26. Thank you all so much for your time. Everyone have a good evening.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.